windy days, especially in Jack Trice, the wind tends to swirl inside the stadium quite a bit. So it makes for a particularly interesting day.
Okay, so what do we get out of that? This is what I've picked up. Rocco Beck didn't play. Said he bothered Matt Campbell. Said he wanted to play. Did all he could to get on the field, but he was taken off the field. And Iowa State's 2 top wide receivers, they did not play.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to keep everybody healthy. It's kind of one of the, I know Matt Campbell. I mean, for 3 or 4 years at least, maybe 4. Actually, it might have been 5 years. They didn't even have a spring game at Iowa State. I know Matt Campbell does not really like playing a spring game very much. So it's kind of one of those things. I think if it were his choice, I think he would rather not have any of that. A few years ago, I want to say it was 2019, maybe they did some open practices in spring where they had like a couple, like the Friday practice a few weeks in a row was open to the public and stuff like that. I think he would much rather do something like that than do a spring game. So it does not shock me one bit that he wanted to keep like Rocco Beck and Jalen Knoll and stuff and Jaden Higgins and stuff like that. Keep those guys out, keep them healthy. They're established starters. They know what they're doing. They don't need the reps in spring ball like a JJ Cole would at quarterback or the Army transfer receiver would, something like that. So it doesn't surprise me a ton that he held those out. I don't think there's anything to read into it or anything like that.
But there's good news concerning Rocco Beck's performance the previous scrimmage.
Yeah.
That he apparently tore it up last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think he'll just be a redshirt sophomore going in, but he plays like an upperclassman. He plays like this is his redshirt senior year. He's just a very smart guy. And it's natural for him to have a big jump from his first full season of playing time up into his second season. So, the same stuff that we've been hearing like coming out of spring is the same stuff that everybody's been hearing now. It's like, oh, we're athletic and we're maybe as talented as we've ever been. We're athletic and, we're glad to have everybody healthy and the defense is looking great. The only reason the offense can't move football is because the defense is so good and all this. It's just, everyone's hearing the same storylines this time of year, but it's just kind of, it's one of those things that Iowa State is returning all 22 starters on offense. All 11 starters on offense and then most of the defense. So it's one of those where you're just getting guys reps. It's kind of all there is to it. You're not really breaking in a lot of new talent necessarily. Like you're not trying to find a new starting quarterback or trying to find a new running back or something like that. They've already got their starting. They've got pretty much, I would guess that they've got solidified starters for all but the offensive line right now. And I would guess maybe a couple spots are fairly solidified there. So it's kind of just, I think this spring practice, I think, is really more just about growth with the established starters than there is about trying to deal with any sort of major turnover like they have in the last few seasons, really.
So, Levi, that sounds like a good thing, but is that, in fact, totally a good thing that there's a less competition than in most locales?
In this particular situation, I think it is a good thing because the last couple of years have had some turmoil, whether it be the gambling thing last season and having to break in a new starting quarterback or, after the 2021 season when you lose, an NFL roster worth of seniors. And, they've dealt with a lot of turnover the llast couple of years. And I know part of Matt Campbell's philosophy and how he builds his program, both by players and coaches, is consistency, and continuity. So having all 11 starters on offense back and most of the defense back, especially when on a team that was 7-5, could have been 8-4 or 9-3, if not for a few bad plays or a couple bad games. They were not far away from something like that. And the team is also very, very young. So it's really, at this point, it's just getting reps for a young team that did that I think most people would agree overperformed, or not overperformed, but they exceeded expectations last year. And honestly left some wins on the field probably. So they definitely exceeded expectations last year. Rocco looked much more mature than I think we were anticipating he would. So it's just a matter of getting reps, expanding the scope of the offense. I mean, frankly, the biggest thing for me for spring game is getting Taylor Mauser broken in as the new offensive coordinator. That would be the big thing for me, looking at like the offense, especially. And then defense would probably be on the linebacker side, and then breaking in a new cornerback alongside Miles Purchase. But it's I in this particular situation, I do think it is a good thing because it's such a young team that did play well last year. It's not one of those, we've got great news is we've got everybody back. The bad news is we've got everybody back situations. It is the good, it's good news. We've got everybody back because anybody that's coming back generally played well last year.
And so with losing all those close games last year, that could have turned into a couple more wins, and playing in the Big 12 that's anticipated to be the most competitive in college football. Well, you got a kicker who, despite the conditions here today, Kyle Conradi, if I am pronouncing that correctly, hit on 3 of 40 plus in conditions in which were more difficult than your typical 40 plus yard field goal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what they would have dealt with today is about as hard as about as difficult a conditions as he's going to have to deal with outside of like weather and snow, outside of rain and snow or whatever. So, I mean, seeing that he went, that he hit a few of them beyond 40 is a great sign. Iowa State has either had a bad kicking game or a very good one. No in between. And hopefully we can continue the streak of having a good kicking game. In the end, college kickers are college kickers. They can be really good 1 minute and then be total crap the next. So it's kind of one of those things, but someone hitting three of them beyond 40 yards in blustery conditions in a stadium that gets very difficult to kick in, is a good sign for sure. Kind of the main podcast on our network that I host wherever, when we originally started it, one of my co-hosts was Cole Netton. Who's a former Iowa State kicker and actually was the most prolific kicker in Iowa State. It still is the most prolific kicker in Iowa State history. And he was talking about, he told a story one time about how he was kicking, I think it was his junior season, maybe. I can't remember which game he said it was, but it was particularly windy that day. And one time he was lining up for a field goal and he saw the flags on the goalpost blow opposite directions. And he's like, well, I guess whatever. And I think he ended up making it or whatever, but it's just one of those things, just the way Jack Trice Stadium is built, the wind is tricky. So, it's a good sign to see him go 3 or 4, but I'm not going to crown him a Groza finalist or anything like that just yet.
So Levi, it's off-season talk, and the off-season of the last couple of years has been more tumultuous than any in the history of college football. So there's a thought out there that everybody's safe, that there's going to be a super league. There's 70 Power 5/Power 4s now, and everybody's good to go. And then you're going to have this Premier League deal where the group of 5 is going to be included, and so forth. Then the large portion of the speculation deals with the opposite, that there's going to be contraction. So does the Iowa State fan base keep track of these rumors, proposals, speculation in regards to, you got to think that they're on the, not necessarily on the chopping block, but on the
bubble,
the edge of it.
They're on
the bubble.
Yeah, they're a bubble.
Basketball term.
So that's one of those things too. So the answer is yes and no, because the talk of the super leagues and stuff like that is the epitome of off-season talk. And they talk about, is it going to be a 30-team league? Is it going to be a 50-team league or something like that? Because if it's a 30-team league, Iowa State's probably on the outside looking in. If it's a 50-team league, Iowa State's almost certainly in. So it's kind of one of those where everybody's got a different number for how many would be included in this hypothetical super league. But I also see a lot of issues with that concept that I just don't think I think they're going to prevent this super league from happening. At least how where the Big Ten and the SEC break off and do their own thing, and then everybody else comes, and does something else. Right? I don't see a realm where that works. Because I don't think the TV money is there to do that. Not those two conferences by themselves. I mean, sure. Do they have 90% of the biggest brands in football? Sure, absolutely, no doubt about it. But I don't think that's enough to get. There's not going to be a lot of casual fans of schools outside of those two conferences that are going to be that interested in watching that league, especially if they're going to be like, you got all these Big 12 schools, the Big 12 is going to be at 16 teams. I would be willing to bet that most of those fans are not going to be interested in watching this league, other than us watching Iowa get shithoused by somebody in the Big Ten. Other than that, but other than that, we're not going to watch a league that's playing for a trophy that we're not eligible for.
Exactly.
I think that is a thing here I think is not being properly weighed by the by the general public. I think the people in charge understand that, the people that are actually making these decisions understand that and realize that one, ESPN seems to be they got some of their own stuff to figure out, and they're obviously the biggest power broker in this entire thing as far as money goes, as far as TV money goes. And right now, I don't know if ESPN could afford to make that league happen without cutting in Fox and CBS and all these other people or whatever, and that's just dividing up that pie more. I mean, there's a lot more complicated discussions to be had about that, but right now, from my perspective, and you understand that I'm a little bit biased in this too, being from a school we're a bubble school, wherever you might get in, you might not, type of thing. But from what I can tell and on my understanding of the situation is that a super league that is exclusive enough to exclude Iowa State, a bubble school like Iowa State, is probably not going to happen. It's probably not viable. And if they were to break off, do something and break it, break football away from the NCAA, I think it's something maybe like they were talking about where you have, the Power Four conferences, and then maybe a fifth one that has G5 teams go in and out or something, something like that. That seems like the most, I don't know, logical, reason, whatever you want to call it, maybe the most viable solution. And I don't even know if it's a viable one or whatever, but it's hard to get too, upset about anything like that, because we've kind of dealt with this before with the Big 12. There was a long time where Texas was making life very difficult for everybody else in the Big 12 and making it very stressful, especially for Iowa State and Kansas State and all those schools that, back in 2010, if the conference blew up in 2010, Iowa State and Kansas State are probably in the MAC or something like that right now. And, we've dealt with our own little, Cuban Missile Crisis situation with the Big 12. So, this situation with, well, will we or won't we get left out of a hypothetical super league down the road is one that I don't think we're going to devote a lot of time and energy to paying attention to that stuff right now.
Well, I believe you're right. I hope you're right, because I think that an SEC Big Ten college football landscape would be rather boring.
It's a demonstrably worse product. I mean, sure. I mean, right now, the idea of Alabama playing Michigan in a non-conference game is cool because it's kind of a novelty. You don't,
Yes.
That's why it's cool and fun. If like every single week is the biggest game of all time, then none of them are the biggest game of all time. It's just a product, and that's all it is, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just TV.
Yeah, the same 8 to 12 schools are going to be running into each other every season in the playoffs. And again, I think a lot of people, and you are saying the people at the very top are not thinking in this direction, and I hope you are correct.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are believing that you can just rip out the middle portion of the country. Because to your point, if you're an Iowa State fan, a Kansas State fan, Oklahoma State fan, are you watching a lot of Penn State and Michigan? Probably not.
No.
But there is a connection there. We watch our team. So you have different levels of fans, obviously. You've got your Iowa State fans, and that's all they watch. But you've got your Iowa State fans who then are connected to the Big 12. So their default second game is they're going to watch Oklahoma State and Kansas State play.
Right.
And then you've got your super college football fans that are watching Iowa State.
There's the diehard nerds that'll watch
Then they'll watch everybody else, or they're watching the biggest product out there. But
the largest portion of the TV fan base is the casuals that watch their team and like the first chunk of the game right after their game or something like that. Like that's the vast majority of college football viewers. That I don't think the people that talk about this type of thing a lot don't really represent the majority of the TV watching population of college football. And the problem is that those people are also not on Twitter to talk about this stuff. So this conversation exists in a weird ecosystem where the majority voice of the majority of college football viewers and how they consume college football content aren't talking about this on social media with the people that a lot of them are kind of the college football nerds that will tune in to, they'll tune into Ohio Toledo on a Wednesday night just because type of thing, that there's a misunderstanding of what college football fans, what the general college football fan is and what they behave like and what they watch. And most of them are not making appointments to watch teams of other conferences, and some will watch other teams in the conference, especially if they're on their schedule coming up or something like that. And there's even fewer that will watch teams outside of the conference, especially if it's not like a rival or something like that. it's, I don't know. It's a weird thing. There are times and you see headlines come out where it does feel like nobody's at the wheel, but I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's what's going to happen is going to happen. And if we are left out, then we're just going to go have fun at the other table and have fun doing our own thing. There's lots of FCS fans that have had a plenty good time over the years cheering for their schools, not cheering, not playing for the FBS national championship. North Dakota State fans have had a good time over the last 20 years, watching their team demolish FCS. And there's lots of things to play for and lots of fun to be had outside of trying to make it into a 12-team playoff that's going to be 80% the same teams every single year. And it's kind of what there is to it. And there's a lot of fans of Big Ten and SEC schools will tell you that the only joy to be had in college football is winning a national championship. And that's just not true. Maybe that's the only joy left to be had for Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and Michigan or whatever, where they've climbed the mountaintop and now the only joy left to be had is winning a national championship. Maybe that's your reality, but that is not the reality for Iowa State or Kansas State or Oklahoma State or Arizona State or Arizona or Colorado or anybody else in the Big 12. That's not anybody's reality in our conference. On our conference, we have fun playing each other. We have fun with between the fan bases and in my mind, the true essence of what makes college football fun is what is deeply alive and well in the Big 12 and will be going forward, where it's, there's not a couple blue bloods running the conference. There's parity where you'll see schools going up and down the standings pretty regularly. And it's a lot of fun fan bases. I'm just looking forward to it. If Iowa State is someday down the road in 10 or 5, 10, 15, 20 years, not playing for the same big trophy at the end as Iowa, it is what it is. So I'm going to choose to enjoy Iowa State where they're at right now, I guess.
Absolutely. Well stated. I will not take it any further than that, because it would be a shame if a fun league like the Big 12, which again, I don't think it's that arguable, should be the most competitive in college football, not just this season, but it projects to be like that on a regular basis.
Utah will be very good this year, but I think they're losing quite a bit after this season, so that's reasonable to expect them to slide back a little bit. So now, you've got a good chunk of that conference that, when they're good, are capable of competing for and winning a conference title. Utah is obviously very good. Arizona's in a good place right now. We'll see what their new coach does, but they're in a good place. Iowa State has been in a Big 12 championship game in the last 5 years. Kansas State won a few years ago. Baylor, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, all of those schools, TCU, all of those schools are definitely capable of competing for conference titles. Cincinnati has previously made a playoff, and UCF has obviously had their successes and stuff like that too. Kansas is, I forgot about Kansas. Kansas is a good program now. It's one of those things. There's going to be lots of moving up and down, and the Big 12 is going to be, in my opinion, this season and going forward, should be the most fun league to pay attention to for college football nerds. If you're an SEC school and all you care about is Alabama and Auburn, I can't help you there. There's no blue bloods in the conference left, but there is a lot of fun football to be had, and that's what we're here for. I don't know about you guys, but the day we start talking about why titles only mattering and not like everybody enjoying themselves is, to me, that's when you've veered off the wrong path. Is when having fun matters less than, the all-out ruthless chase of trophies, I guess.
Well, yeah, all this was designed to be a departure from real life. So
yeah, it's like, and if we're all not, if we're, we're chasing trophies, but everyone's miserable the whole time. Look at Penn State. Everyone's miserable all the time, even though they're chasing trophies. It's one of those, or Ohio State, even though they do win some trophies, but if they're not winning trophies, they're miserable. So it's one of those, like, I guess that might be fun. I don't know. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me when, going 10-2 and winning a January bowl game isn't a good season. That sounds horrible. That sounds really miserable. But I would say it's never going to be a blue blood. Probably. I think they missed that train. They probably needed to get good 50 years ago if they ever wanted to be a blue blood. So it's one of those where I don't think any Cyclone fan can reasonably like say, oh, well, we need to be winning Big 12 titles every single year. We need to be like getting ready to push for the playoff and all this or whatever. Like Iowa State is a good enough program. Matt Campbell's a good enough coach. He'll have them in position to win a conference title once in a while, or, especially in an expanded 12-team playoff, he'll have them in position to maybe sneak in as an at-large, once every 5 years or something like that or whatever. It's a good enough program to do that. Am I going to lose sleep because they don't get to the playoff 3 years in a row? Probably not. I'm going to go and I'm going to continue to tailgate with my family and my friends and have a good time. So
Levi Stevenson, wide right, Natty Light. It's on SB Nation, Iowa State Athletics right there. Please join him, and Levi will be knocking on your door here in the next few months.
I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be it's an interesting season. This Iowa State got a decent schedule for the first year in the expanded Big 12. I think there's a lot of wins on that schedule to be had, and I think they could. This is a team that could surprise a lot of people. I really do. I mean, like, we're in spring. I have no idea, but nobody has any idea about their team. But just, going off paper and going off last season, seems to me that Iowa State, I think their preseason, they'll probably end up getting picked like somewhere between 5 and 7, I would guess. I think they should probably be higher than that, especially with the schedule they got.